Ukrainian journalist dies in Russian captivity on the verge of her salvation. Russian missile attack on Odesa Oblast kills 4 and wounds many. Are international organizations weak or lack will to act? Interview with Sergei Sumlenny, Eastern European politics expert, founder of the European Resilience Initiative Center. Good afternoon. These topics in more detail in our daily episode with me, Henry Keane, and my team at UATV English doing our best to bring the hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. My colleague, Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshchyna, was captured by Russian occupying forces in Ukraine and has died in Russian captivity. The grim touch to the tragedy adds a sad fact: a salvation was coming. Victoria was about to be swapped in a next prisoner swap scheduled, according to Petro Yatsenko, a representative of the coordinating staff for the treatment of prisoners of war.
Everything was done to bring her back. Moreover, preliminary agreements had been reached. Victoria was supposed to return home soon. Defense intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.
I know someone who is a father and his little 5-year-old daughter is waiting for a third operation, as 50% of her little body has been severely burned in a fire caused by a Russian missile explosion. I know many people whose children, relatives, parents died, murdered by Russia in this way or another, burnt, shot, drowned, raped, tortured to their death, solely for being Ukrainians. And I know it is nothing new. It is a genocide, and it happened many times before in history of humankind, with Jews, with Armenians, with Tatars, Chinese, with many peoples and nations, you name it. As xenophobia is nothing new to us as humanity, as species. And I know this war is not the first one and not the last one, unfortunately. And Victoria's death is yet another tragedy, a new separate one, and where more people will suffer, where those who knew her will suffer, those who loved her, those who worked with her. And I know is a fact that you, my beloved audience, won't remember her name for long. There's more casualties and victims of this terrible war surely follows shortly, some even nameless, and we never hear of them anymore. But I also know that we talk about Victoria Roshchyna right now. And we remember her for what she did for Ukraine as a journalist. Victoria was and always will remain a Ukrainian journalist who worked for Hromadske and also wrote for Ukrainian media outlets. In 2022, she received the International Women's Media Foundation Award for Courage in Journalism. Roshchyna disappeared on August 3rd in the temporarily occupied area, the last day she was in contact. The first info about her location emerged in May 2024, when Russia acknowledged the fact of her detention. Detained by Russia's FSB while reporting on the invasion of Ukraine, Victoria has been forced by FSB to record a video saying that she had not been held captive and that her captors had actually saved her life, but they actually only took it.
Victoria could not be stopped, but exactly this gave us a glimmer of hope. Maybe her sincerity and persuasiveness would save her all of a sudden. But Russian captivity killed her. She was not courageous for the sake of courage. She took a risk because she believed it was her duty. Natalia Homeniuk, founder of the Laboratory of Public Interest Journalism.
Natalia Homeniuk is right and very precise in her choice of words. As Victoria has not died in Russia, she has been killed in Russia. Murdered, as simple as that. As when Russia invades Ukraine and keeps Ukrainians in captivity, depriving them of not only food and proper medication, but a core human value, freedom, on their own land, and Ukrainians die on the very verge of their salvation, that is called a murder, and the perpetrator is called a murderer. And that is exactly what Russia is. And acting as a murderer, Russia launches a ballistic missile attack on Odesa. This very morning, killing at least 4, including a 16-year-old girl, Governor Oleg Kipa reported. A 2-story building where residents lived and worked was destroyed in the attack. 3 people, a 16-year-old girl, a 43-year-old woman and 22-year-old man were killed in the rubble. Another woman died in the hospital later due to severe injuries, Odesa's mayor, Kipa, said. Russia has recently ramped up attacks against the southern Odesa Oblast, targeting port infrastructure and damaging several civilian vessels, even. For example, a Panama flagged civilian ship. These attacks alone killed 8 people. Why Russia does it is obvious. Ports in and near Odessa are a key hub for Ukrainian agricultural exports via the Black Sea. Ukraine opened a new maritime shipping corridor last August after Russia pulled from Turkey UN-mediated Black Sea agreement. Russia then unleashed a series of missile strikes and commercial vessels carrying Ukrainian grain in the Black Sea, disrupting a period of relative calm which has helped to stabilize global food prices. Moscow perpetrated nearly 60 criminal attacks on Ukrainian ports, civilian vessels, and grain storage facilities over the last 3 months, almost 300 port infrastructure facilities. 177 vehicles and 22 civilian vessels have been damaged severely or completely destroyed as a result of these brutal attacks. On the whole, 79 civilians were injured, including port workers, logistic company employees, and ship crews. Putin is deliberately intensifying attacks on the port infrastructure in the southern port of Ukraine. The goal is to reduce Ukraine's export capacity and provoke a food crisis in regions of the world that are directly dependent on Ukrainian grain supplies. The impact is not limited to Ukraine, of course. Above all, it affects the global south and European nations. Today, over 40 countries receive Ukrainian grain. Among them are Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Spain, Turkey, and the Netherlands even. The European Union has responded to the increase in Russian strikes on civilian ships transporting Ukrainian grain by urging interested countries to press Moscow to stop these criminal actions. But guess what? EU and interested countries did not succeed in pushing on to or talking sense into Moscow, obviously, as we clearly see. Moscow just does not give a damn. I wonder if some international organizations are even capable of actually acting or just expressing their concern amidst Russian terror and condolences afterwards. Good afternoon. UATV English is online and in the air. Sergei Sumlani, Director of European Resilience Initiative Center. Sergei, am I right? Hello.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor
Pleasure
and
is
a
all
pleasure.
ours. Please tell us more about European Resilience Initiative Center. What is that? What you do?
Well, we are a Berlin-based think tank, which was founded in the first months of the Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, with the only goal back then to convince the German political elite to send weapons. As you remember, Germany was ready to send helmets, but wasn't ready to send any lethal weapon to Ukraine. And after we have lobbied a lot for Leopard, for mortars, for Panzerhaubitze 2000 German howitzers, after the weapons came to Ukraine, we realized that the need for support of the Ukrainian army is here. And we have realized that despite the fact that guns from Germany are coming to Ukraine, there is a lot of need for all other things, from drones to power stations, from medical equipment to communication devices. And we have realized that a lot of German citizens are absolutely not happy with what our government is doing, or better speaking, not doing. And they were ready to donate with the aim to support Ukraine in their fight because they felt somehow betrayed by their own government and they wanted to express their anger right now, not waiting until the elections, but just now with their money, with their donation to support Ukrainians. And then we came to them and said, okay, we have connections in Ukraine. We can help you to help Ukraine, and we can do it together.
Well, obviously, you're doing very well. You've been recently telling me that story that you've been sending 1 or 2 trucks to Ukraine, to the Eastern Front line to help. And this is a very big amount of help and big amount of money, isn't it?
Yes, every time when I see the readiness of German citizens, and I'm talking about normal Germans, like our average donation is 65 euro. Okay, some people donate thousands, but most people donate like 50 euro, 100 euro. How ready Germans are to donate, it's always a pleasure to see it. And I always tell the Ukrainians, look, Germans are not our chancellor. We are not Scholz. We are not the Social Democratic Party. We stay on your side. And the last donation campaign is an example. We have raised within 24 hours, we have raised 200,000 euro. And that was a shock for me too.
Right.
Of course, because we need now like to buy the equipment, to transfer the equipment, but it's actually a pleasure to do it. And when you see how ready Germans are to donate, you really start to believe in how good these people are and how strong they stay on Ukraine's side.
Thank you so very much. And please, on my behalf, of the person that lived for years in Berlin, Gradam Kodam, please tell Germany, thank you so very much. Ich bedanke mich. Also, the next question. Rammstein. The Rammstein, yes, has been postponed. A new date is coming soon, so on and so on. But let me take it a bit more personal for you, say what you are expecting from this summit, sir.
Well, I always expect maximum, or I hope for maximum. And I always know that this hope will not be fulfilled. My hope would be that the countries which participate in this summit, that they give Ukraine as much as they can send now.
So my next question is, European leaders, do you think they really plan to put the war on hold in the near future? Or better asked, is there a way to put the war on hold in a way that Ukraine wants it to be put on hold?
That is the biggest problem in this military cooperation between Ukraine and the West, because the West and Ukraine have different views on what is the result of this war, which they want to have. And while Ukraine has the goal to restore the control of its territory, not because it's about territory, but because the people who live there need to be safe from Russian occupation, and Russia needs to be deprived of an opportunity to attack Ukraine again. For many in the West, the wishful result of this war is just that this war stops, that the fighting phase stops, and that would be good enough. But for Ukraine and especially for the world, it's not the stop of the war, just an invitation for Vladimir Putin to continue in a couple of years and maybe sooner.
Sure.
So for Ukraine, of course, it is now extremely important to convince the Western partners in the outcome of this war that it is also in the West interest.
Right.
And that is the problem, because when we had the World War II, the anti-Hitler coalition parties, despite the fact that they were extremely different and the Soviet Union was a totalitarian, evil regime. But even in that constellation, the Allied powers and the Soviet Union had more or less a common vision of how the world should look like after the war. And they had a common vision that Germany, the Nazi Germany, should be defeated and occupied. And now there is no such common vision for Ukraine. The future is restore of control of its territory, freeing its population, return of prisoners of war, return of kidnapped children, and depriving Russia of its striking capacity, that Russia cannot attack Ukraine. Not that Russia guarantees or says they will not attack, no, that they cannot. And for the West, it is just to end fighting, to freeze this conflict, how many call it, to some certain extent, to provide Ukraine with some promises and to rely on Russia's goodwill. But it doesn't work for Ukraine. And that is the biggest problem in diplomatic communication between Ukraine and the West. And that is the deepest problem of the lack of sufficient military support for Ukraine, because Russia's military defeat doesn't stay on a program for many countries in the West.
I agree. Let's speculate. Let's say the war is being put on hold. It is paused. The ceasefire is on. Russia will definitely, that is actually the question that I just asked to many people. And the answer is more or less different to what I think. So Russia will use that respite to rearm. I have no doubt in that. Will the West be helping Ukraine to rearm also during that ceasefire? Or you think the international institutions will just return to usual uselessness, expressing deepest concerns and all that rubbish?
The problem is that even if both sides, Russia and Ukraine, would use this time for rearming,
Right.
Ukraine's military capacities, industrial military capacities, are much lower than the Russians. So after a certain period of time, this balance in production will be dramatic. And another problem is that, of course, during the ceasefire or freezing of the conflict, Ukraine will be deprived of its right to attack Russia's facilities deep in Russia's territory, oil refineries, transport hubs, storages, ammunition depots, storages of military equipment, etc. While Russia, of course, will continue to sabotage Ukraine with cyber attacks, with bribes. Russia will continue to attack in a hybrid warfare Western institutions, NATO, Ukraine's allies. So we will practically have a situation when, during a certain period of time, Russia will be able to accumulate much more resources for the new war and will continue to sabotage Ukraine and the West, while Ukraine's hands will not be tied behind back. They will be just cut off.
Well, that was the perfect euphemism, actually. The hands are not just tied, but cut off. Thank you so very much. I would love to have another conversation with you, and I would love to be more ready for this than I am now, because this is the topic of a discussion of a great importance for the people of Ukraine and for the people of Europe, I think. Isn't it not?
Thank you so much for this invitation. Always pleasure to be your guest and hope to see you soon.
We stay in touch. Thank you so very much, Sergei. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Director of European Resilience Initiative Center, Sergei Somlyany, was at the Sphere Studio at UATV English. That was it for tonight. My name is Henry Keane, and that was me and my team at UATV English is thanking you for your time. We did our best to deliver the hard truth in easy terms for you. Please like, share, and comment in return. Your voice matters as it helps Ukrainian voice to be heard globally. Please stay safe and tune for more in the weekly episode. Goodbye.